weekly YouTube live like yours to have a conversation with others. I think it's much more fun.
Sorry. Oh, there we go. Good. My Yeti picked up. What did you say? Weekly, like?
I said, welcome to our weekly YouTube live. I said every week I should do this style. It's more fun. But I don't know why it's not linked to the right thing. Double check. I think my team didn't link it to
it says live.
Can you see me live? But YouTube live. It's live. There's a delay. There's a delay. So I was live. Okay, yes. Cool. Yes. Hey guys. Yes. I was like, it's not even live. Cool. We have a special guest today. Let me play 1 minute countdown timer.
All right.
Cool. So welcome, guys. Hello. And we have everybody here. Welcome. Hey. Okay. All right. Hey, guys, this is Dr. Nancy Lee. Welcome to our weekly YouTube live. Today, we have a special guest, which is Ben. And Ben is also the owner of a brand which is called Seattle Data Guy, right? It's a very popular brand on LinkedIn. He also has his own YouTube channel. Quick introduction regarding what we plan to do today, and quick introduction. Hey, if the first time you come to our channel, this is Dr. Nancy Lee, and I am a director of product featured in Forbes and have helped 100 people land a dream PM job offer in fan companies, a unicorn startup, and continue to get promoted as a product leader. And every Wednesday, we try to provide some free coaching to teach people how you're able to actually advance your career as a product manager or even break into product management. And today, we do want to welcome third guest as well. Okay, I do like your cat, Ben. I think he can stay. Yeah, and so I started as a chatting with Ben, and I started to change the style of our YouTube live, start bringing more guests, and because I believe it's much more fun to have a third-party conversation and also share with you guys the real life experience, what does it look like to work with product managers from different functions. So behind the scenes stories is also very valuable, and especially Ben himself had years of experience working as data engineer, working for Meta. He knows the inside out of different big tech companies. How can they use data to make data-driven decisions, build amazing product? And from the engineering perspective, and of course, he also has his own data consulting company, and very excited to learn about all the adventures he had. Of course, very, very popular YouTube channel. Everyone should just follow him. Just search Seattle Data Guy and or find on LinkedIn, or just find out in the description of this video. We're tagging in all our posts. You should be able to find him. Awesome. So let's do this. Without further ado, let's talk about today's topic, which is how do product managers actually work with data engineers? together to build amazing product. And so Ben, can you quickly introduce yourself? I've been making lots of introductions. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself and we jump into today's topic. At the same time, people will comment on the chat, whoever is here, come and say hi in the chat, what's your name, where you're from, and what specific questions you have regarding data and product management, the combination between both. Okay, so Ben, turn it over to you. So tell us more about your background.
Yeah. I mean, I think you covered some of it, but I've been working in data engineering for the last, I think, like 8 or 9 years at this point. Originally started working at like a hospital and then a healthcare startup, Facebook. And then all throughout that time, I've been consulting at the same time. And so at this point, I'm just consulting and helping companies either set up their data infrastructure, set up their data strategy, kind of help them move forward, so they can get the most out of their data. So that's my current focus.
Awesome. So, Ben, let's dive deeper regarding how the relationship between data engineers and PM work has changed throughout different experience you had, because you already work for a smaller company regarding, you mentioned it, healthcare startup, all the way one of the biggest tech companies. So can you tell us how the relationship changed between small companies and big companies, between data engineers and product managers?
Sure. I mean, I think overall at smaller companies, the relationship generally was a little tighter. I think, and to some degree, I think that's because at this specific company, the product and the data engineering were very interconnected in terms of like what we did was directly going into the product. So instead of like generally at some companies where data engineering might just be part of the process of collecting data that then informs product managers which features are doing well or things of that nature. In this case, the literal product was often being supported by the data engineers. So like the work that I was doing was actually being put into the product itself. So I think that was like one of the key differences is like, well, the actual product here, we're not just trying to gain information about the product. This is the product, right? And so that I think that was kind of the key difference. To some degree, that could be more of the company that I worked for and less of the like the difference, because the company.
Are you saying that when you're working for startups, you're closer to product, was able to really directly influence the product even much closer compared with when you're working for Meta? Am I right? Did I interpret correctly?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the other thing that was different was that the data engineering that I was doing, like the stuff I was building, was literally going into the product itself, whereas generally, a lot of times your work done as a data engineer is tracking features that software engineers have created. So creating whatever pipelines to track whatever software engineers have created, that then just goes to data scientists, and then data scientists use that to kind of inform their discussions with product managers.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us the differences between data engineer and data scientist? I personally was really confused about those two terms. I saw one person can play both roles, but through our side conversation before this talk, looks like they are doing something slightly different. Can you tell us the differences?
Sure. And I think for a while, like there was definitely this like expectation that data scientists do everything. When the role kind of came around, it was also kind of the era of like Hadoop and a lot of things that were kind of changing in the data management space. So there was this kind of expectation that data scientists would both do like Hadoop type work as well as their data science work. And I think that's kind of when people realized it's really hard to do both. And so they ended up kind of specializing, whether it was on purpose or on accident. There kind of became this natural bifurcation between data scientists and data engineers. So data engineers tend to be the people who build and own the data sets that then data scientists use and rely on. That way there's a little more focus on what's actually getting done.
So which means, for example, the latest all the AI talk track regarding ChatGPT is in the news every single day. And myself also use it a lot. I also make several YouTube videos about it. So if we talk about data scientists trying to leverage data to create like those machine learning algorithms, do you think they're more towards how to use data, which is data scientists, not data engineering? Am I right? All the AI stuff is more science.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more on top of that. Behind that, they're obviously somehow storing that data and accessing that data, and that could be a data engineer. It would depend on how they're actually storing that data. They might just be storing it like in some form of raw form. But my guess is they've done some level of like pre-processing, right? Like they've done training, they've done all this stuff where they're collecting all this metadata, and then that metadata gets stored somewhere so that as you're building and testing out that model, you can use that efficiently and easily. So yeah.
Very cool. Can you give us specific examples? For example, I think it's easier for the audience. Most of my audience are more PMs. We're not very techy, but the easier to make it dumb it down for us. For example, use some product as an example. Sounds like what you describe, if I interpret correctly, for example, one of the product I launched in the past, which was when I spoke on your YouTube channel last week regarding the product is use AI, which is machine learning, machine vision to help Siri to reduce car crashes, basic smart camera, detect the movement of cars, pedestrians, and figure out when they're about to hit a pedestrians and doing the like accident predictions. So all of this, it began with metadata, like collecting this is a car, this is a pedestrian, and this is also biker, and this is a crosswalk. Those are like metadata we collect. And then we actually, at the time when we designed the architecture, we like locally store them. The analytics actually happen on the edge, which inside a smart camera, and then turn into metadata, which equals to, hey, this is like this pixel size equals to a car with confidence of 95% likely, something like this. It's a car. And then with this geographical location, and then it's happened to be on a crosswalk, equals to this is not safe. And those are metadata, and then we send it to the cloud. You saying that from the data engineers perspective, you guys are the one who decide how to create those metadata, what the format of the metadata, where do we store it? Store in the cloud, store in the edge, or sending them between those two places? Is that, am I right as the data engineer?
Yeah, to some degree, that might be something we take on. Nowadays, there's been a further specialization in like things like ML ops. Thinking back to that example when I talked about like building like a data product, what that product did was like a lot of fraud detection in healthcare and things like that. So we had someone that was essentially our data scientist who like built the models, and then they handed like they did the research, they kind of like figured out what it should be, and then they ended up handing it to us, and it wasn't ready to go into production yet. Like it was like, okay, here's what it should do, and then we implemented it, right? I think there's definitely been a further specialization there where it's like, yeah, now data engineers don't necessarily do as much model deployment and figuring out exactly like how features should be stored, and things as much. Now you've got ML ops and people who are more machine learning engineers who'll take that on. But that's generally what happens. Like generally data scientists, depending on the company, but a lot of data scientists do a lot of research, and then they'll kind of talk about their findings. And then someone that's more on the engineering side, whether it's a data engineer, an ML engineer, will likely implement that and figure out how to store it and figure out how it should actually, be operating in real life.
Perfect. When we teach students, we always use like case studies. Would you be able to tell a specific case that maybe a Meta? I think it's more, or your healthcare company. Either one is fine. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing without telling too much confidential information. Just high level use cases, right? In this case, I'm a data engineer and working on ABCD product. What's my day-to-day look like? I do this and this and this, and then I hand over the data to this and this. And then when does PM actually come into picture? Can you give us a case study, give us some overview? And for people who actually putting comment in the chat, feel free to continue to put your questions here. I'm gonna get back to you guys. I see Chris here, Leok, KUG, and Anchik. Are you guys? I see your questions here. We'll get back to you guys later on. Feel free to put your questions here. Okay. So Ben, yes. Let us know like specific case studies. So it's easier for people to digest.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's like a specific example. I mean, besides the healthcare startup. I mean, at Facebook,
or you can use the healthcare startup. Either way is fine.
Sure. thinking through the healthcare startup, again, like we built several products there. I think while I was there, we built it was either 2 or 3. I don't remember which one it was. I have to look at my resume. So yeah, we built several products. And in both cases, like, we kind of had this whole process where first, like, oftentimes essentially our PM would talk with our stakeholders. For example, we built something for like opioid tracking like how much people were prescribing opioids to see if there were like people that were over prescribing it. So we could, obviously crack down on that. So, our PM would talk to our stakeholders as well as like professionals in the field. So like actual doctors and dentists, and be like, all right, like what should I see? What's normal, to kind of understand what's important. What's important, what should we be reporting on? How should we be reporting on it? Like what would be useful? So they kind of gathered a ton of information, and at the same time, while they were doing that, our data scientists and kind of data engineering were kind of working together to prove out that we could basically meet some of these needs. So like stakeholders were like, we'd love to see whatever, some sort of heat map of like where overprescription happens. I'm like, okay, can we do that? Do we have the data for that? Like, do we need to get more data? So we would like go back and do a quick analysis. The data scientists might like, put together some numbers. We might start putting together either some baseline dashboards based off those numbers, and just proving that like, yes, this is possible based off the data that we can do. And so I think that's kind of like that first step, is like figuring out, okay, what do people want? And then what can actually be done based off the data that we do have for this specific product. And so then after we've kind of like gone through that cycle and been like, okay, we can kind of prove this. And on top of that, not only is it possible, but it's actually useful. Because I think that's the other thing. It's like, well, okay, it's possible, but maybe if you were to put it on a heat map and look at like whatever average prescription per county, it's the same for every county. That's not useful. So also like, you're going to that level of like, okay, is this actually useful if I was an end user? So we kind of went through some cycles with the PM, the data scientists, us as the data engineers, as we're trying to figure out like exactly what things should look like. And then once we've kind of like, I think, set all that up, then we kind of develop, your project plan. We think like, well, what's the end goal? Like, how do we want to launch this feature? Okay, this is our feature. This is how we'll launch. We kind of just move backwards from that. It's like, okay, what will need to get built to build this whole, kind of product. And then just, again, going backwards, and then essentially we'll kind of develop from there. But that was kind of the general process of how we worked with the PM in that product. In this case, it was probably more similar to that of like a software engineer, I think, whereas like, you might be testing and building products, versus I think traditional data engineering at a large FANG. You're likely, I like to say, you're kind of the middle child in the world. Well, like the software engineers get to build things based off what the PM says. The data scientists kind of get to demand the data that they want, and data engineers just kind of have to give both people whatever will make them happy. The software engineers just do what they want. They'll add new columns, they'll add new features, which impact your data model. And then the data scientists will want to analyze those new features, or maybe they want to analyze old features, but then the data's, removed because the software engineers have removed it. So usually in large organizations, you're definitely a little more of like this middle child, where you just kind of have to accept that you are the least in control, and you're just kind of accepting whatever everyone else is doing on both sides of you. So
yeah, I was about to bring up the relationship with software engineers as well. Interesting. Hold on. So let me break down a little bit. I actually have two follow-up questions. Very, very, very meaningful and eye-opening, by the way. Now we know everything end-to-end behind the scenes, how self-search was made in different companies. So now, Ben, specifically for your healthcare case, where did you get those data? Like, who will even give out the data regarding how much like those prescription drugs is prescribed in different places? Is it public available information? How do you guys even get it?
No, it's not public. It's under HIPAA, insurance providers can give data to third-party analytics companies. So there are some stipulations there that, like, yes, you can totally get claims data if you're, fall under a certain category, and then like have met all whatever criteria the government says you must meet. Everyone's got to be HIPAA certified. After that, there's still criteria after that. It's not like you can go to any analytics company. It needs to still, in theory, go to a specific type. But yeah, so that's how insurance providers are often interested in this as well, because they're like, well, we don't want our people being overprescribed, or, we don't want to be, we don't want to be the cause of something. Actually with opioid, right? Like one of the things that people found out, they're like, I think there's like one city, I don't remember where in America, that like, it was like, they were getting like 100 pills per day per person in that city. Like it was something like crazy high. And so it's one of those things where it's like, there is some validity, because like, if you're an insurance provider, do you not have a little bit, if you're writing those checks to approve that, do you not have a little bit of like responsibility for being like, that seems weird? And I mean, it goes for everyone, obviously, like in that chain.
Very high.
Yeah,
100 pills per person per day.
It was something crazy. Like you can look it up. There's an article. There's like a few articles about that. I'm honestly pulling that number out. I just remember looking at it and being like, that is a crazy number. Like, yeah, that's an unnecessary number of pills. So that's like, I think that was one of the points that like really, if I recall, like hammered home why like I think Purdue and several other companies got sued so heavily. Purdue Pharmaceuticals, not the university, because it was like, this was clearly, this was obvious, guys. So
are you saying that the pharmaceutical company who manufactures those pills was sued, or the doctor who prescribed it was sued?
I think it was the actual pharmaceutical companies, because like there was also some other things where they were like pushing it on like there was multiple levels of things in there where it's like they were pushing it, they were saying it's totally safe, like doctors were like, okay, cool. I think doctors were getting like huge kickbacks, so there's like layers upon layers for this. I think there's a show called like Dope Sick, if you want to like see it in an entertaining fashion and not just read about it. But
wow, that's what's going on. And then insurance company was ones who actually, people paid premium, but insurance company will cover those drugs cost if they prescribe too much, and also impact the health of people living in the city. Whatever they insure, they need to pay out more money. That's how the business works, right? So that's why they're very incentivized to crack it down.
Yeah, there's multiple levels of why, but yeah, I mean, like, if you keep people healthier, you in theory have less costs. And insurance providers in particular, like often, someone once pointed out, is like insurance providers are great because they get to charge you money when you're not sick, because usually you usually don't get sick till you're older, and by the time you're 65, you're on Medicaid. So the insurance provider doesn't care. Like they're like, all right, you gave us our money while you were healthy, and now that you're old and sick, you can yeah. I don't know if this has to do with product management, but like, yes, this is the wonders of insurance and healthcare.
We just learned something new regarding how that I didn't think that way. I'm just thinking about right now, we're not getting sick, so don't want us to get sick. But yes, once you're older, when you really need to pay people to go to the hospitals, they're off the hook. The government takes over.
Yeah, because you're not working anymore. So you're not on your work insurance anymore, because you're not on your work insurance anymore. You're not going to use that insurance. So either you have to pay a really expensive insurance, or you're on Medicaid. And I guess now there's like, what do you call it? Not Obamacare. I don't know what the actual term is, but that one. But even that, it's not great. So yeah, it's basically the government's job after a certain age, where it's like, all right, you're on the government's dollar at this point. No, it's a great business model in terms of like how much money you can make. I think if I recall, like those, like, what is it, like United Healthcare or whatever, like after again, Obamacare went in, but I'm trying to remember the actual name. After it went in, like it like tripled or quadrupled the size of those insurance providers over like 10-year period, in terms of like market share, or not market share, but whatever, valuation. So yeah, no, it's a quote unquote great business. So
wow. That's what's going on. Wow. Do we have any consultant listening right now?
There's no secrets here. It's all there. it's all there.
But most people didn't know how exactly they make so much money and actually triple their valuation for 3 times.
I don't like,
was
I got it.
intended.
I'm definitely pulling numbers out of here, but I know it's like stuff that if you were to look at, you're like, wow, that is actually, yeah, all right. If I would have invested in healthcare, I would have made a lot of money. Like, don't invest in big tech, right?
Yeah, I was saying that don't invest in tech now. Drop a lot. So now let's talk about tech. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Data engineer is the middle child. I was about to ask regarding how do you guys actually work with software engineers? Because all engineers, so from PM perspective, we group you guys into engineers. Usually when we go to the interview, how do you work with engineers? Oh, that's how we do it, right? So group all of you guys together.
Yeah.
So now, so make it a little bit, break it down a little bit more. Are you saying that in Meta, let's do you mind mention the type of feature you worked on?
I mean,
product?
I was mostly working on internal enterprise solutions. So like I worked on getting like data from like the recruiting solution that we have. We didn't use, I think, an out of the box recruiting solution, like, you know, your usual, whatever you want to call it, like not LinkedIn. ATS, not LinkedIn.
ATS, yeah.
I mean, there's an ATS component, but like also just like your general, like, I'm trying to think, like, what would you call it? It's not a CRM. It's not a, you know, ERP, whatever you want to call your recruiting version of a CRM, right? Like where you're managing all of
ATS system. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. That an ATS system. So yeah, like basically that. So just getting data on that and pulling it out and like also tracking like how people are interviewing, how often do they interview, who passes, things like that. So that was kind of the product that I worked on. So it was almost more, it was less about the product itself in this case and more about the process of like hiring people, especially then when like Meta at that time was like hiring like crazy. So that was like a major point that they were just trying to gather talent and figure out the best way to find talent. And, you know, so, yeah. So
you build those product and for the like internal product, and then specific, are you saying that the product manager constantly changing ideas and then software engineers just keep on deleting columns of data? It's like, what happened? How exactly you guys communicate? That's weird. Usually I assume, well, at least in the interview, we will say the following. And the interview will be like, oh, as a product manager, we'll also define what's best for our customers, what kind of KPI we need to track, and then we'll work with our engineer to design the best solutions. So are you saying that you do it on the fly and you say delete stuff or changing ideas and opinions?
It's not that it's done on the fly. It's that, like, especially in FANGs, right, there is an incentive to constantly build and change and try new things, right? Like that's how you get promoted for everyone, right? Like PMs, software engineers, data scientists, like data scientists need to find, you know, new value or, you know, they won't get a promotion. Software engineers need to build new things, otherwise they won't get a promotion. So to some degree, it's like the incentive of the process, and there is a process, but oftentimes data engineers are like, software engineers, I think, feel like not necessarily data engineers, but like the process of getting data and tracking it can be a hindrance to them building, right? Like for their view, software engineers want to build, right? Like they want to build things that function, and then it doesn't necessarily want to connect it. Like they're not going to like think about like, oh, I need to connect this for analytics. It's like, does it work, right? Like, does the end user, you know, can they work with this product?
So basically, they build the MVP fast.
Yeah. Well, MVP and even just the features, like, hey, it works. Perfect. It's, you know, great, you know, and then later on some data scientists or some PM might come in and maybe they had some metrics early on. Maybe they didn't. Generally they do, but overall there might be some gaps in terms of what they're tracking. Because maybe later on they're like, we need to track this, or, you know, hey, we removed this feature or remove this column and it broke all my pipelines. So that's what I mean when I say that. It's just like adding in data engineers into the process just feels like a slowdown to a lot of people in the whole process. Because like, okay, we could tell you that we're updating this thing, and then we could give you enough time to update it, or we could just change it, and then like you'll figure it out. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Huh. That's the attitude within the company. But isn't it supposed to be okay? So I think we discovered also inside the secret big tech companies. Isn't supposed to be a collaborative environment, and also isn't like that's why people talk, oh, there's lots of tech that that's what it's causing, right? So people just keep on trying to do new things and then fix it later on.
Yeah, I mean, like I think that's definitely always a discussion, right? I think this was something that like people called out in Twitter, like as people are like looking through the code base, they're like, oh, like someone pointed out this, like, yeah, there's like 10 years of tech debt, and I think this was like employees internally, and like they were saying, it's like, well, yeah, because incentivized to build new things, not to fix old problems. It's not that it's not collaborative. There's definitely a collaboration, I think, between PMs, data scientists, software engineers. I think data engineers can be the ones that can kind of get left out. This is why, like, I don't know if you know Chad Sanderson, but like he's got this whole concept of like data contracts, which basically is just this assumption that like, hey, from the product, this data will be provided to you. And the only way you can change that is through essentially like some sort of code or some level of governance, and not just like, hey, I made a change. It's like, well, what if we like captured that change and made it like a, some sort of code or version controlled system. I always like the way I would often sometimes be reminded when changes were happening at Facebook was like, oh, hey, we see you're connected to this MySQL database. Well, this column just got dropped, so good luck. Like I get like an update like as it happened. And so my job would usually run at 12 o'clock at midnight. So I was like, well, okay, I could make a change before that happens. But like, it wouldn't be a person. It'd just be like some automated system that's like, hey, we see you have this, we see you rely on this, so we're just letting you know this has changed. So
who dropped it in the middle of the night?
Software no. Kill it? No, it's not in the middle of the night. I more mean like the pipeline itself will run in the middle of the night. So usually if they dropped it at 8 a.m. in the morning, you'll get that email at 8:15 from some automated system, and you're like, okay, I got to change this pipeline before 12 o'clock tonight, and then it's fine. Yeah. And I imagine to some degree it also depends on where you are. Like if you're probably on the product side, I assume there's much more conversations, because breaking a data pipeline, it has far greater consequences. Where it's like, if it's internal, people are probably like, well, we don't have as much data to deal with, and maybe they feel a little more relaxed. So I think there are, you're always going to have varying experiences depending on the team you work on. I had like specifically picked the team because I was like, I don't really want to wake up at 4 a.m. and get a call that like a pipeline's broken and I must fix it now. Whereas like the internal team, it's like, well, if that happened, if something broke, it's like, all right, we'll deal with it later. So, yeah.
This is what a surprising to discover what does it look like. So once crazy. So we have audience, Andre. Andre is actually one of my students inside of PMA. He said, product management, data engineering, healthcare. I'm sad I couldn't get there on time. It was tailored for me. Andre, feel free to put your questions in the chat. Okay, we can highlight certain parts that you have your own confusions. Ben can like recover or like show some insight for you later on. And we also see some audience from Paris, Denver. Chris is also in Denver, so just like Ben, you're there as well. Yeah. Yep, same location. Probably that's your friends or your fans coming over. This is awesome. We see someone, several people from Denver. Another guy from Denver. Excellent session today from Denver.
Everyone from Denver. Everyone's from Denver.
Are those your audience? Just say follow Ben.
I don't know if I am. That's good to hear everyone. I mean, I'm in my company named Seattle Data Guy. So, but if you look at my LinkedIn, it says Seattle Data Guy now in Denver, I think. So it's not
like
there's no secret.
Like
I'm not changing it. Nope.
D guy.
Nope. Nope.
So we keep the brand name. Make Seattle Denver. We'll think about it later on. So when did you move from Seattle to Denver, by the way?
When did I move from Seattle to Denver? Well, I actually, in 2018, I moved down to SF. So I was in the Bay for a few years. And then COVID hit.
That's what Meta.
Yes.
That's what Meta job.
Yes. They were like, you must move down. I was like, okay, fine. I mean, if you're going to pay me to move down. And then I lucked out and found like a place for $1,400 a month. And I was like, all right, we got a place that's not $3,000 a month. This is fine. So and then go ahead.
Yeah, talk about the tech move. Let's about tech in general. Well, as we know, I just mentioned I was in one week working for a tech company. There's much more complexity than what it seemed like from the outside. We move for tech companies. Do you think it worth it if you look back? Move your entire families there and have a great career, and later on move away from Silicon Valley. So what's your career? How do you decide, and how you design your career? Do you think worth it once you look back?
I mean, design suggests that there was some plan. And I mean, like to some degree, there were things that I think I planned. Like I think consulting was going to kind of work out eventually. So I think I was always kind of doing that with that in mind. Trying to think, in terms of moving, I mean, I think it's going to depend on a person's stage in life. It was an easy decision for me. I didn't have, I don't have kids. So it's like responsibility was low. I'm like, worst things that happen, I get fired in 6 months and I have 6 months more of my lease. And then I go back to Seattle. Right. Like, so that's where I was like, all right, this is fine. So that, again, with no responsibility, it's totally different. If you have kids and a family, it's right. Like making that move, it's a much bigger risk and thought process that goes in there. Yeah. But I think, especially if you're, at any age you can do it, but if you're younger and you've got like zero responsibility, why not? Why not just go out, take a job somewhere if you think it sounds fun, if it's interesting, and you can figure out the rest of the details later. I think the biggest thing is like just make sure. I think is it Gary? I don't forget his last name, but he says like you either got to be learning or earning, and I was like, well, I'm definitely earning at Facebook, so,
and learning.
Yes. Yeah. And learning, of course, but like, I'm definitely earning. So, we at least know that one's going to be crossed off. So it's just one of those, like, it seems like a good choice early on just to take that on.
Yeah. Before I ask the next question, you show me your cat. Let me show you my peacocks.
Oh, you have peacocks? Nice.
Wild.
I was going to ask, are they wild or are they your pets? But okay.
Spotted.
I can't.
You know what? I do need to show off my peacocks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can people see my peacocks?
Well, I'm blind, I guess. Try to look for. Oh, now I see it. Okay, now that's moving. I can see it.
The chair is moving.
Yeah. I was waiting for movement. I'm like, where's it? Where's the moving?
Yeah, it's my peacock. No, it's not mine. Well, they come every day. They come every day. It's crazy stuff. Sorry for interruption. Occasionally they come. I was like, nice, you show up on my YouTube live. This is awesome. Hold on, let me plug in everything. Hey, Ben, I do want to ask you. My cable fell off. Sorry. So I do want to ask you this question. So you talk about moving for tech companies and join tech companies. And now we're going through COVID. Sorry. We're going through recession. We're past COVID. The entire world has shifted. Just like you moved to Denver, I moved to Miami and discovered peacocks in my backyard, like crazy stuff going on. Now here's the dilemma. Not sure if you felt the same way. At least this is what I heard. People are like, oh, you know what? It's very hard to join tech companies now. Mm-hmm. Or at least they heard the news. They heard the news and said, oh, they all lay off. Maybe let me just do other stuff in different industry, maybe do healthcare or oil gas. But there are two different type of career paths they can choose. So they can work on non-PM functions in tech companies, such as support or like even self-support. From data perspective, using data as an example, or like if data engineer, they can be like sales support, so the technical support, right? So they can then get into still join tier one company, like Uber and TikTok. They're still hiring. They're still hiring lots of people. Yeah. For product manager also think about, well, maybe I can join like doing operations for tech company. I have a friend and he works for BCG. He really want to become a PM. Very interesting. He landed a job at Google doing like finance operations, but he didn't take the job. I support that decision. Eventually he joined a startup, like doing like what he really loves to do. Do you see this dilemma for data space in terms of the whole tech industry in general, were more impacted in the recession space? Do you think people quit the temporarily pause the dream of doing what they love to do? For example, could be a data scientist or data engineer in a big tech company, then they took something temporarily in a different track. Do you see this happening in your industry right now? Or your space audience?
I don't know if I specifically see that. I think usually what I see is people who are maybe earlier on in their careers, maybe they like want to be a data engineer. And usually what I tell most people is like, it's hard to become a data engineer straight off of the bat. Most people, I think, go into either data analysis or something similar to that first, just to get some experience in the data world, and then kind of shift it over later on. And that's usually because data engineering just has so many skills that are required that just weren't taught in school. And so you kind of have to do some work on those things. And data analysis or data analyst roles are generally the easiest place to get it. So that's usually kind of like the non-data engineer role I see. I think the other thing I'm seeing is a lot of people wanting to do more consulting. I mean, that could be obviously some bias compared to like what I do. I don't talk too much about consulting on LinkedIn until recently, because I had a lot of people reach out to me on it. So that's when I was like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's see if people are interested in doing consulting. So that's something I think I'm seeing more of. I think partially because, if it's like, if even at Facebook I can get laid off, some people are like, well, why not take a risk? Why not work for a startup? Why not start a consulting company? Why not do something for myself? So I think that's kind of a shift that I'm seeing. Again, and the same thing is like, just as much as like consulting is like, well, why not work for a startup, right? Like if it's the same risk of getting fired, it's like, why not have some fun, do something interesting and new. And there's still a ton of startups being funded. I think I just saw Madrona invested in like a few dozen or a handful yesterday or something. I saw a few come out. There was a good amount. Like I saw a seed series that was like $7 million for a seed series round. So I'm just like, dang,
that's big for seed.
Yeah, these seed series are getting big. I think it's because it's in the
AI
generative
space.
in the AI space. So for multiple reasons, right? Like the talent is very expensive and things like that. But yeah, it's there's still a lot of money I think floating around in the startup world. So if you've got some interest there, that's also very open.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, so since I moved to Miami, open my entire the world view. It's crazy. So there's lots of investors actually during the pandemic moved to Miami and never want to leave because we experienced the winter. The Miami winter is very nice. We never want to move, just like me. So when I started to talk to those investors and recently told me a deal, which is like totally surprised me. Basically, it's the intersection between the crypto and Web3. Lots of Web3. Originally, Miami is very pro for Web3. All the Web3 people move here, and now Web3 went down, AI went up. There's a company with a combination between AI and Web3, and just have those kind of concepts, like early rounds. Oh, guess what? And before AI become a thing, like crypto went down for a year, right? Before the AI become a thing and crypto went down, they're not even able to land some kind of funding. It's like some like 50K paycheck, not paycheck, 50K investment check, right?
Sure.
Nowadays, they oversubscribe.
Yeah.
Just because there's AI came up, there are the very few companies who can do combination between AI and Web3. Now they oversubscribed and they don't take investors' money anymore. So those kind of companies, they continue to grow. Yeah, you're right. When you are like waiting for a big tech company to hire again, maybe it's a great time to join a small company, because you're right. Same kind of risk getting fired anyway. You're losing a job either way. So why don't you do something fun? So because really you don't have that much opportunities anyway to do something fun while we're all during recessions, like it's time to just do anything anyway.
Yeah, I think they often say like recessions are the time that people tend to get their MBAs as well for that reason. It's like, well, might as well do this now. We got the time. So although with MBA costs these days, it's like I don't know if that's true anymore.
It's crazy. I have different opinion regarding MBA. For people who have lots of students who want to become PM, right? Yeah. So people like, I hate those influencers who already land MBA. Always, oh, you should get an MBA. If your purpose is trying to become a PM, don't get an MBA, because only 7% of Harvard MBA became a PM. That was when tech was hot. I'm not saying right now. When tech was hot, they did analysis, only 7%, and then MIT 14%. That's it. 1-4, not 4-0. 1-4. 14% like MIT MBAs. They're very technical and they become product manager. Not even like the Google level product manager. So in the past, among my MIT classmates, that was years ago. Don't guess how old I was. That was years ago. I only have like 3 MIT classmates who joined Google from the business school. And then one of them told me that, hey, Nancy, do you know that the interview for Google 3 times? That this is the 3rd time I got in. So it is actually like MBA doesn't give you a competitive advantage. The real competitive advantage is the experience you had. Even if you work for startup, you have launched something amazing, and especially you can build really amazing stories. Like, oh, during recession, we still turn our startup from almost no funding into next level, creating so many end users. I believe that's a better career path compared to people. Oh, you know what? During recession, let me just hide doing like finance operations, like at Google or Uber, finance operations. But you got MBA, you can do something greater. Why don't you join the startup, create something really amazing, like amazing product, regardless what your true passion is. Could be a data engineer or whatever, product manager in those startups. And I think the better career path for lots of people, and people really just fall into the name of FANG company, but doing finance operations. What's the purpose doing something so boring? Well, personally, I think finance operations is most boring work ever, except like tax preparation, like accounting job. So it's very boring, personal opinion. Cool. So let's see any questions we have from the audience. Question for Ben. KUG. By the way, this is someone from YouTube. KUG Studio. I love this name. Question for Ben. An example of a good PM interaction and experience, or a bad one, from your seat, that how can a PM use data to the best? Okay, so 2 questions. Tell the audience examples of your interaction with good PM and bad PM. What does it look like? Then we go to the next one, which is like examples of like how data can be used the best. Okay, so good PM, bad PM. Let's do this.
Yeah, I don't know if I've worked with a bad PM per se. Maybe a bad project manager, which is obviously a different thing.
A different kind of PM.
Different kind of PM. So I'm like, it might be one of those. It might be similar though, where it's like, a good PM. When you have a good PM, you don't notice, but when you have a bad PM, you notice, kind of situation. Because that's the case with project managers. That's how I usually explain it. It's like, if you have a good project manager, you don't notice the project manager, or like you don't even realize that like things are just going, right? Like there's a flow and it's good. But with the bad one, it's like, we haven't moved forward for 3 months. Something is bad. So yeah, I don't know if that's the same with like good and bad PMs. I think, usually I've people who have been pretty on point and pretty much like, doing a good amount of like using a combination of data as well as discussions with real people, because I think it is that combination, right? Like you use the data to drive like a level of the certain products you develop and features you develop, but I think on the same time you have to talk and understand people. Like I said, I think I referenced that earlier with the healthcare product, where it's like, yeah, like let's actually talk to people and understand what is useful to them. We just give them a number. It's like, okay, can they make a decision off this number? Like, what are they actually doing with it? Okay, if we give them this list, what would they do with this list of people? Like, trying to figure out beyond just, okay, we built this feature, right? Like, okay, but how is it going to get used? Is it useful? So thinking about those things. Yeah,
getting the user insight, which is foundation building amazing product. Hey, I wonder what a question. This leads to another great question. As an engineer or data engineer or any kind of data scientist or engineers in total or in general, how much was the interaction with customers? When do product manager actually bring you into those conversations?
Yeah, I don't think we had too many direct conversations with customers. Again, we're generally just kind of held in the back. I think maybe a little more at Facebook. I might, just because at Facebook you're expected to have a little more ownership. So it's to some degree, maybe there's a PM that's kind of helping decide what gets built, but to another degree, it's kind of like, yeah, but you also kind of need to have some ownership of that as well and have some discussions and be willing to state your opinion. So at Facebook, I think it happened maybe occasionally a little more that you talk with stakeholders and customers. But at the startup, it was like, someone else would go talk to the real people. We'll just build whatever needs to get built.
What would you wish could have happened? Let's define this. So let's define a really good product manager. What do you wish the good product manager would do to, I don't know, anything, to enable you to talk to a customer, to bring you early in decision-making process, or even like, I don't know, deliver the KPI earlier. So what would you wish the amazing, define the imaginary amazing PM, what would they do in terms of working with you guys?
I imagine this is different for everybody. Like I do like getting a little more involved with discussions just because I like knowing the why. It's like, okay, why are we building this? Not just let's build this. But I also know, like, and this is one of the things I think I've even talked about on my channels. Like some people like data engineering because you can kind of just hide and you do your work. It's not like you're not doing your work, but it's like, but you don't have to like fully interact with people and fully understand. You can just be like, okay, I built you this thing. I've done my job. And so I think that you'll find people all across that spectrum where some people want to know why and they'll want to know early. And yeah, that's kind of nice. Some people don't want to be bothered by meetings and like, hey, when you have a feature and you have the requirements and you have everything you want, let me know. I will build it for you. So I think that kind of ranges.
I see. But from your perspective, you love to know why get involved in the decision-making process.
Yeah. I think having that why is always helpful because otherwise you just kind of feel like you're doing stuff to do it, but there's no, like, why am I doing this? Who's this driving value for? So.
Yeah, especially I think that lead to entrepreneurship of yourself. That's why you start your own YouTube channel, start to have your own consulting business. And I think in general, depends on what the definition of successful career, right? So I was like you, I started as engineer, systems engineer, working on oil rigs. Can you imagine me? Oil rigs.
Hey, totally.
Oh, yeah, exactly. The hard hat, the helmet. So I felt very disappointed if I was left out in understanding why. If I didn't know what the bigger picture as an engineer, I feel very, very annoyed. I think it's based on what people's definition of long-term career success, but leading to what they believe is a good PM need to tell them what to do. Like for people who actually don't want to be bothered, probably their definition of successful data engineer is to be the expert of creating best data set in a short amount of time, get it done and deliver. For people who want to be growing into entrepreneurial tracks, probably I want to know why, or I'm just whatever with a hammer in the tool set, didn't even know what I'm about to build together. I think that's a difference. Cool. So now let's move to the next question. This audience have a really good question regarding from your seat. How can PMs use data the best?
That's trying to think. Like, it's such a broad question. I mean, for my understanding, at least, like, when with there's kind of the baseline stuff, figuring out what features are people actually like using and working with. I mean, and engagement's kind of like this baseline metric that everyone can use. I think on the flip side, there's defining like your true North Star metric, but also making sure you think about whatever your counter metrics are. I think this is something that sometimes can get missed, right? Like, and counter metrics generally are like, oh, well, if our goal is growth, okay, cool. But if our churn is terrible, right? Like, or something else on the other side, I mean, you're growing maybe, but maybe you're, in 6 months you won't because you're churning at like 70% or something. But you're growing so fast you wouldn't notice. But like when you look at churn, you're like, wow, we're losing people very quickly. I think that's usually the classic example. But yeah, I think having that, and then maybe, especially now as we're getting into a world where people are trying to be hopefully a little more concerned about more than just, the numbers, thinking about, what other impacts are you having besides like growing products? Like, okay, we're growing a product, but we're, with like opioid, that's a good example, right? Like, okay, we're selling more. Yeah, but we're selling, one of these towns in these cities is getting 100 pills per day per person or something crazy, right? Like, that's not a good growth thing. Like, so I think also thinking about what are the negative effects of whatever your positive metric is, your true north metric is. So. Yeah.
This is awesome. You think like PM already. You also talk like a PM. This is amazing. Actually, I have a student here. She is a she, and many of these people actually, all women, surprise. Well, I have male man in my program, but happen to be all the data. I have many students. They became data product manager.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And so and some of them land job offer in like healthcare industry, some of them in the like a fraud detection industry, and also some of them land offer from like kayak, those kind of like travel industry, Expedia, as a data product manager, which is similar to sounds like what you described. Like they define what the data product look like and trying to
Mhm.
understand what the North Star metric, different things with own data product. You sounds like PM already. Exactly what I say. North Star metric, content metrics. It's like boom through my mind. It's amazing. Yeah, just like what PM, the same phrases we're using in our terminology as well. Just amazing. Awesome. Cool. So Ben, let me see what other questions we have. We also have questions from LinkedIn. LinkedIn people mainly say hi, Chris. Hello. Thank you for hosting today's event. Thank you for joining us. Awesome. Okay, great. Cool. So we are towards the end of this talk. Anybody, if you like today's talk, make the panel to make sure to comment in the description and let me know if you want to do more of those kind of like fire chat style of our YouTube live. And if an additional question for BAM, please comment below as well. Make sure to share this video with any like people who are interested in the intersection between data and product management. And also one last question to you, Ben, how can people find you if you have more follow-up questions and in general?
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much Google the Seattle data guy, and you'll see my probably newsletter, blog, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So,
awesome.
Yeah, so yeah.
Cool. Awesome. We're also going to link Ben's YouTube channel in the description of this link. And we also have one for LinkedIn where we'll link the proper one for each channel, and feel free to reach out to him as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben. Thank you so much for your valuable time and insight.
Awesome. Yes, thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Cool. All right. Talk to you soon. Have a good day. See you guys.
Yep.
Now, let me end the live streaming.